Well, this is where we
tell the truth and shame the devil.
all right, people. Today we got a very interesting day today. We have some guests here at Teamwork Englewood. Also, we have a new attorney here from Teamwork Englewood. What's your name, dear sister?
Hi everyone, this is Marusa Heathery, the newest addition to Teamwork Inglewood.
Oh, perfect, perfect. And you know we got our guests and our guests.
Daniel Masolia. I'm a civil rights attorney at First Defense Legal Aid.
All right, and my partner.
Hey, it's Vera Giles Norris letting that cat out the bag. I'm here.
You already know what it is. I'm the crime chaser, Martin G. Johnson, and we're gonna make this quick. And we're taking calls today, people. So if you have some questions, now I've been warned. Now, if you what did you tell me about? If you have an active case, don't say too much.
I'm going to say that if you've got a specific situation related to the police, whether that's a charge, whether that's a lawsuit that you may want to file, I would keep it very general. I wouldn't talk about any of the details about what happened to you. You can talk about a hypothetical. Maybe something happened to Batman or Superman. Didn't necessarily happen to you. Just keep it general.
All right. And before we continue on, people, please share the video. This is very informative. Please share it on your page or message it to a friend or text it to a friend. So we're going to get started. We're talking about police misconduct, not police brutality, misconduct. That's the proper term. Am I right? Am I correct?
That's one of the many terms.
Okay. All right. You know, because, you know, in the hood, in the black hood, we say police brutality.
That's what we say.
That's what we say. So we just got to get it out there.
And it's not wrong.
It's not wrong. Okay. All right. Let me give it to my partner. All right. Now, before we get started, I want to give a shout out to Teamwork Englewood, which sponsored this with myself and Vera.
Right.
And we want to thank Teamwork Englewood because sometimes they don't get enough props in the community. They do a lot of great work in the community.
And don't get enough props. Yeah, you're right.
Okay. They don't get enough props. So we're here. So let's get started. We're going to start with some questions and partner, I'll let my partner start. You got the questions in front of you. So
you know what? And can I do this before we start?
Go ahead.
Again, I know you introduced yourself, but you said civil rights attorney. What made you get started? I mean, what was your driving force? I'm just curious to know that.
So I believe deeply in a world that is more equitable with less misery for everyone. And I think that one of the main sources of misery and of injury and of harm to individuals and to communities is police abuse and misconduct. And so I've been a lawyer for 9 years, despite how young I look. And I've always wanted to do something that helped the people. And that's the work that I choose to do now.
Okay. So you know what? I'm just going to kick it right off with my first question. And, you know, what should you think about if you have a concurrent criminal case?
Okay, so let's say you've had an interaction with the police, or someone has had an interaction with the police, friend, family member, loved one, and there's a charge, and that charge should have been brought. You want to file a lawsuit, but nonetheless, you still have to defend the criminal case. You are a defendant in a lawsuit. I mean, in a prosecution. So one thing that I always ask people to keep in mind is that if you're thinking about a civil rights lawsuit and there's also a criminal case going on, think about what's at stake in each of those things. So you have a criminal charge you're defending against. What's at stake? Your liberty. I mean, that is your freedom that is at stake. And then you think about a civil rights lawsuit, and I'm not saying that these aren't important. I'm not saying that they don't play a huge role in trying to make a better society for everybody. But what's at stake? The possibility of maybe getting money a couple years down the line. And you've got to weigh those things, right? If you've got a case, I strongly advise everybody to wait until that case is done until you file a lawsuit, if you choose to file a lawsuit. And that's because if you're making statements in one case, but maybe your attorney is recommending that you don't give a statement in the criminal case, it makes things a lot more complicated. It gives a lot more opportunities for you to be made to look like a liar, even if you are telling the truth. And the one sort of, I don't know, what's the right word? Disclaimer I would put on that, is that you got to be really mindful that there are time limits to file certain kinds of lawsuits. So if you've got a criminal case that's looking like it's going to go more than 2 years, that's the time, probably early on, you want to talk to an attorney and say, hey, am I going to lose my ability to file a case against the police and against the city if I wait until this case is done. And then you get some good information, get some good advice, and then you make an informed decision. You balance those risks and rewards, like personally for you.
Quick question. Now, suppose, this is off the record, but suppose if I say a person get arrested for a murder and they didn't do it, and they have to sit in the county for 7 years, but I'm hearing, my knowledge is that you can't really have a civil rights lawsuit until the case is completed. Is that true? How that works? Help me out.
That's generally true. So if you are in that situation, you're in the county for many years and you end up getting a not guilty verdict, then you're in a spot where once you get that not guilty verdict, you have some options. You can file a lawsuit at the time of the not guilty, but what you lose is you lose certain other claims by not filing within 2 years of the incident itself. So let's say, hypothetically, there is some violence, some police brutality during the arrest. If you wait more than 2 years, even if you got an ongoing case, you're not going to be able to file based on that sort of violence. And one thing that can happen in a criminal case and a civil case that happen at the same time, a lot of times a court, typically a federal court, will issue what's called a stay, which is basically like putting a pin in the civil case until the criminal gets resolved. It's not a guarantee, but it can happen, and that can be a way to preserve all your options.
Okay, go ahead, partner. I just threw that in. Go ahead.
So you and I'm just going off the cuff with one of the questions, the roadblocks to a suit. If we could talk about that, give us some of the roadblocks to a suit.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's challenging, right? And it can feel really intimidating to try to file a lawsuit and take on one of the most powerful institutions in the city, and seems like it's just you. So there's that. You gotta think long and hard about whether or not this is going to achieve your goals, or whether or not it's going to bring you more pain. And so that's the first thing, is sort of the personal calculation you got to make with yourself. Like, is this something, am I in it for the long haul? Because it is a long haul, and it feels really invasive. And they get to ask you all kinds of things during that civil lawsuit about your history, about bad things that have happened to you, about other interactions with the police, if any, your employment stuff. I mean, it's invasive. And you get to ask them questions too. You get to ask, how many times has this officer been disciplined in the past? You get to ask, how many times have you been sued? What kind of training did you get? But so I think that's one roadblock. There's the personal aspect. And then there may be certain pieces of evidence that would be helpful for you, but that end up just getting destroyed in the regular course of business. So let's say something bad happens in a restaurant, and they got security footage, but the footage goes away after 30 days. Well, if you don't get that footage, you may be in a weaker position. And one thing that people forget is that your words, your testimony is evidence. So if you tell a court, or you tell in a lawsuit what happened to you, that's evidence, right? It's not that everything you say has to be backed up by a video, the surveillance footage, whatever, that may or may not be available. But if there's something that happened in a place and you're worried something's going to get destroyed, you should take quick action. You should consult with an attorney and try to file some kind of emergency motion to make sure that is preserved. Send them a letter letting them know this is going to be important to a lawsuit. That can help protect your rights. Another roadblock is, it's unfortunate, and I don't think it's right, but there's a lot of biases that could go into how a jury is going to assess your credibility. So let's say you've had some trouble with the law in the past, and now you're filing a lawsuit accusing the police of committing some misconduct. A lot of times, that stuff that happened to you in the past may come into a lawsuit. And I don't mean to say it's insurmountable, that you can't get over it, you can't beat it, but that's a challenge, and I think it's something that's unfair. And then finally, when what a lot of people don't think about is when you're in a federal civil rights lawsuit, which you filed down on Dearborn Street at the Dirksen Courthouse, the jury pool is not the same as a jury pool from Chicago. You're pulling from 8 counties around that may not represent you or your community, may not have familiarity with the sort of stuff that we know goes on every day throughout the city of Chicago. And so that's a challenge, right? But people win lawsuits every day.
Every day, right? So, and I don't know if you went into detail, but I'd like to go into a little bit more in detail. Oh, you got a question, partner?
No, go ahead. I got three
Yeah,
questions
okay,
right here
okay,
waiting on. I'm letting you just do your
Get them out
thing.
the way. Okay.
Get them out of the way.
You know what? So the typical process, the length for a suit, like take us through that. Take us through that process. And I know you kind of went through that some, but I want to just really hammer in on the process.
All right, let me break it down. So you got the first step, which is the investigation. And ideally, you've started working on this early. You've consulted with a lawyer or soon after something happens. And the first thing that any good lawyer is going to do is collect information from the city and from, could be a village, could be a town, doesn't have to be, it's not just Chicago where this sort of stuff happens. And you want to get videos from the police department. You want to get police reports. You want to get, if there's been a court proceeding, you want to get copies of the transcripts of those proceedings. You might want that. And like in a criminal case. And so that's the first step, the investigation, because that's what you want to do to make sure that you've really got a lawsuit. And if the investigation, something happened that wasn't right, it may not have been illegal. It may not have been a violation of the Constitution. So if you are able to do that investigation, it puts you on the front foot, getting medical records, seeing a doctor, stuff like that. If you're injured, that's the first step. And that could take months.
I got a quick question. I got to interrupt you from the message. It said, what if I get picked up by the police, charged with a certain amount of cocaine, and the cops never showed up in court because I never had that? So this, I guess, is
because they never had the cocaine,
because
right?
they never had the cocaine in the first place. Well, unfortunately, this happens a lot. And I think that's really a question for probably a defense attorney in terms of what's going to happen if the police don't appear in court. Typically what happens in the criminal court, and this is just general information, this is not advice for your specific situation, but what typically happens is, the state and the police, who are probably the complaining witness, they get a lot of leeway. Like they miss a court date and the judge, more likely than not, is going to give them another chance. Not all the time, but we'll continue this court date for a little bit later. And then you miss a court date, they put out a bench warrant for you, right? So it's not an even playing field. But I think that's a question to ask your attorney, whether that is a public defender attorney or a private attorney. But there's a decent chance the case will get dismissed if the police continually don't show up to court, because this is a difference between a civil rights lawsuit and a criminal case. In the criminal case, the state has to prove something. They have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that you did what they say you did. And if their witness, the police officer who said that there was cocaine and there wasn't, how are they going to prove that? Right? It's going to be your word against no word. And that's a good position to be in. But in a civil rights lawsuit, on the contrary, you got to prove something. You got to prove it's more likely than not that what happened, what you say happened, is what happened. And you got to show that that was a violation of the law.
Wow.
They said, it said the case was thrown out. I was in jail for 9 days. My bond, they said bond. My bond was $75,000. I was just let out of jail. The case was thrown out. In other words, I believe what I'm asking, the person's asking, do they have a lawsuit? That's what they say. That's the question.
I think they should.
That goes to my question. What can you sue for?
Yeah. So in this case, and I'm just going to speak generally about this kind of situation. So this is not limited to your particular facts, but I'll say in general, if there is a charge brought and that charge gets dismissed, there may be a lawsuit.
Yeah, and was in jail for 9 days. So because I want to tap in on that. So everything was thrown out, but how does this person get them 9 days back from torture? Because if somebody's never been to jail before and you lock them up for 9 days, that can have a long-term effect and nightmares and stress, life-changing. So how I guess I'll say this. How do we determine whether that's a lawsuit? What are some of the factors that got to go along with it?
Some of the factors that go along with determining whether in any given situation there's a lawsuit where someone was held in Cook County Jail for 9 days, which, you are so right about what that is and what that can do to a person. And what you would look at is you would look at what facts was the detention based on. Is there a witness that saw some kind of hand-to-hand drug transaction and reported that to the police, and the police relied on that in arresting you, and the court relied on that in putting you in county? That's going to be tough, right? Because police typically, they get a lot of leeway in terms of believing a witness. Like unless there's something that makes them suspicious, the police are allowed to rely on a third-party report of a crime or an alleged crime. That's one thing that you would think about if you were in that kind of situation. Another thing you might think about is how was the charge dismissed? So, did it get nollied? Did it get stricken off the call with leave to reinstate? Is there a not guilty verdict? And all of those things have different implications for a suit that probably I could talk about for the rest of the time we're gonna be on here, so I won't do that.
Okay.
But those are the sort of stuff you want to think about.
Now, I'm gonna ask a question now. What can you not sue for?
What can you not sue for? Okay, so one thing that that rubs a lot of people the wrong way and that people will hear about is you call the police about something and they don't do anything. You say, somebody robbed me and I called the police and they didn't do anything. 99.999% times out of 100, that is not a lawsuit. Maybe even 100 times out of 100, because there's not really a duty to provide police service. And there are legal duty, constitutional duty. There are exceptions to this, and those exceptions may relate to, let's say a person was put into a police car and then the police left the vehicle unlocked and somebody came in and robbed you there. In that case, there might be liability, because even though they didn't protect you, they created a special relationship between you and the police, and that can be a violation of your due process rights. And then another exception to the general rule that there is no duty to provide police service is if the police create the danger. So if the police tell someone that you've had a conflict with, that you did X, Y, or Z, that they knew that person wouldn't like, and then that person comes after you and hurts you, that's a state-created danger. And that may be an exception if you are harmed as a result of the police not preventing that sort of attack. And one thing to think about in this context is that even if something is not a violation of the Constitution, it might still be a violation of like a police policy. So, if the city of Chicago's rules for how CPD is supposed to respond to crime complaints or reports were violated, it may be possible that there's some sort of discipline for the officer, but that's separate from a lawsuit.
Okay. Real quick. The person came back, they said, this was definitely a violation of my civil rights, because they were trying to have me to give them a person with a gun or something of that nature. How can I contact the gentleman? Because I do believe I have laws. Okay, it's up there, First Defense Legal Aid, 1-800-LAW, LAWREP4. It's on the screen. Go ahead.
It's on the screen. And you know what? And I was just thinking about what he was saying. It's a case. Here's an example. Someone calls 911. Okay, help! I need help. I'm in danger, and police show up, but they see no signs of danger. They're knocking on the door, and it's like, okay, someone called and said but needed help, but we're not getting the answer at the door. They kind of peek around, don't see anything. Lo and behold, the person is in there in need of help, beat half to death, live. Police didn't do anything, but the person called and said that they needed help, but you could clearly see the police showing up on the Ring cameras or whatever they have, kind of saying, oh, no big deal. Must have been, somebody just playing. Is that considered something that that person could sue for, or their family members if the person don't live?
Well, we're talking about civil rights, though.
We're talking about civil rights. It's not the same.
No.
I mean,
you would sue,
well, so let's just say
if your civil rights is violated, that's what we. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I want to. Okay.
I'll say
But maybe I'm
I'll
off
say
of it.
one little thing about it.
Okay.
So there are certain requirements about what the folks who run dispatch in Chicago, it's OEMC, and Maywood, it's Ike 911. There's a lot of different iterations of it, a lot of different kinds, but there are some requirements in state law, and I'm going to make a confession, which is that I do not know all of them, which is why I would say talk to an attorney who's not me on this particular question, or talk to me and I'll do the research. But there's a law in Illinois called the Illinois Domestic Violence Act, and there was a case recently where it's tragic, where someone called and reported that a significant other had threatened them, maybe called multiple times, and then that person ends up being murdered by their significant other, and the police didn't act. There was a case recently where someone was able to bring a lawsuit and win a lawsuit based on a failure to protect in that context. But it's a different law. It's not the Constitution. It's the Illinois Domestic Violence Act.
Okay.
And I think that case is on appeal right now, so don't know how it's going to shake out.
Okay.
Wow.
All right.
Oh, pardon me, or you want me to go?
No, go ahead.
Okay. What should you know? What should you not do before a suit if you're thinking about filing? You told us that earlier, but yeah.
You should not make any statements about that. It should be like zip shut. Shouldn't make any statements to the police.
Not even go on social media?
Especially not go on social media. Because one thing they're going to ask for, and one thing that I'd encourage everybody who's asking questions to be careful about, is not give too many details about what's going on. Ask general questions that could apply to a lot of different people, or that may not even apply to your specific situation, because then that statement's not out there, right? And so you shouldn't be posting on social media. It should be like radio silence. You shouldn't give a statement to COPA, which is the oversight entity for Civilian Office of Police Accountability in Chicago. Shouldn't do that without talking to an attorney, because what'll happen is you get in with an investigator, you're trying to get some accountability, some discipline, completely understand where that desire comes from. And I think it's a good desire. But if you give a statement, a recorded statement, and let's say something happened at 4:00 and you forget and you think it happened at 1:00, and then later you remember and it's 4:00, all of a sudden you've got an inconsistent story. And later, if you file a lawsuit, that may be used to make you look dishonest or make you not look credible. So the sort of golden rule is, the more statements you make right after something happens, the more risk you put yourself in if you are in a position where later on you may want to file a lawsuit. Because once you do it, it's out there. And one thing that you should not do if you're thinking about filing a lawsuit, if you make a statement, you shouldn't delete it, because you can get in big trouble for that, because that's destroying evidence, basically.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Now that's a
There's
FYI.
another question on here.
Okay. What's the question? You can read it.
I was arrested on a sting, then they left and did another sting while I was still in the car. They went and made another arrest. I'm not sure what a sting is.
That's interesting. So I'm
Yeah.
assuming a sting was like a raid or a search warrant or some kind of task force, maybe. I think it's strange. I would want to use the Freedom of Information Act in this situation. I would want to get records of what that sting was about, why you're being arrested, and then why someone else is being arrested, why you weren't taken to the police station. Because that seems strange to me. I don't know that type of situation could be a lawsuit, but seems a little unusual. Maybe it was related. Maybe the sting involved like a group of people, and they were saying that you were part of it. They were saying this other person was part of it. And, I don't know. Seems a little strange.
That is strange.
Yeah, that is.
Because it's just like they may do pick up a lot of gang members, and they go from one place to another and grab one and grab half. Instead of taking you to the police station, they hold you until they find this other person. It could be that. I don't know. It just, like you said, that's a good one.
And one thing that the earlier question sort of made me think about is, being told that you need to give up the guns. We've been hearing this in Chicago for
a long time.
Long time, that, you get picked up and say, find me the drug dealer, find me where the guns are, and we'll let you go. And I think that's highly improper policing, but it definitely happens.
It's you and me. Oh,
That's you.
it's me.
Yeah.
I'm ringing. I'm sorry, y'all. Sorry.
And you know what? And I just want to make a note for those that want to call in. The call lines are open, so feel free to call in if we're not, kind of reading and telling your story right. And again, if when you call in, if it's about your case, then you don't necessarily want to give too much information about your case. Just kind of be in general, so that nothing you say could be used against you.
Because this broadcast go deep. How do you be blaming me? You miss your money.
Right? You never know.
Yeah, never know. So we're going to take a break real quick. I want to hear from our new attorney here in Teamwork Englewood real quick.
Gonna change the flavor.
Yeah, just briefly. We'll come back to civil rights because I got to get her active. She
I can talk a little bit about what we're doing here at Teamwork.
uh-huh.
So kind of going back to what was said earlier, if you get arrested and you're dismissed and you're released without charging, or if that thing's stricken off with the leave to reinstate, any of those things, that stuff is still on your record. So a lot of people don't know that could be a barrier to you trying to seek employment if you get denied through a background check. That's because all of that stuff still stays on your record. So try to be proactive and get on top of that before you go searching for a job if you know you've been arrested in the past. And if you've ever served any sort of probation or any sort of time in prison, you have a 3-year waiting period before you can start the process to clear your criminal background. So that's another thing to keep in mind. It's 3 years from the completion of your sentence is when you can come in and get that whole process started. A little quick tip is to go to 35th and South Michigan at the CPD headquarters. You pay $16 to get your rap sheets. They'll give you a full, comprehensive, detailed report of every arrest that has your name on it or any alias that you might have used. And then you can bring that information into us at Teamwork Englewood, 815 West 63rd Street, and we will help you get that process started so that you can get employment and remove all those barriers that are placed in front of you once you have an arrest record.
Now, I have a question for you, Counselor.
Yes.
I under my understanding, I know you're fairly new. I think they pay for your rap sheet here.
Yes.
You guys pay for.
So we do. We have a deal that we kind of do where we will give you a money order for that $16 if you're unable to pay for that. So you can come in here before you even go down to CPD, get that money order, and then they are open Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday for fingerprinting from 8:30 in the morning to 1:30 in the afternoon. Some days we have something called a rap sheet day that you can sign up for. And we take people down either on a Monday or a Friday to help them get their rap sheets on the days that they don't usually do them. So just call in if you have any sort of questions regarding that whole process.
Teamwork Englewood. Call the Teamwork Englewood. Okay, I have another question for you. Tell my listening audience what can be expunged and what cannot be expunged.
Okay, so I will start with the things that cannot be. So expungement is essentially when you are able to physically get copies of your arrest record just destroyed. So there's no evidence of it anymore. And then with sealing, they take those documents and they lock them up. And only very specific circumstances is where somebody, an employer, can ask you to see those. Like if you're applying for a job at CPS or DCFS, just something that has to do with children. That's one of those circumstances where they could potentially ask you, but they can't discriminate against you. There's an Illinois statute, I don't know it off the top of my head, that actually protects you from that. So things you cannot get sealed, there's a few. So any sort of a DUI is just uneligible for sealing. Any sort of animal cruelty offense, as well as domestic battery offenses and criminal sexual assault cases, as well as any sort of a violation to an order of protection.
What about arson?
Arson, I believe you can.
No.
Arson, can you not?
No.
Is it not on there?
Yes.
Okay, arson you cannot either. I
Arson, and I think picking up prostitutes too.
Yes, yeah. Anything that falls under that criminal sexual assault.
We had a little slick saying for that, right? I forgot what it was.
Man, a little sexy, you gonna get you.
So like patronizing, prostitute, soliciting, anything like that is not eligible, as well as reckless driving. So a lot of those traffic associated ones, And any sort of minor traffic offense, like a petty driving on a suspended license, things like that, those stay on your record. But those aren't as crucial when it comes to seeking employment. Like, they really can't do anything if you have some minor traffic offenses. And those are the ones that are just unsealable by law. And then the rest of them, like I mentioned, if you have a case that ended in a dismissal, that is eligible to be expunged. So just be careful about that, because sometimes you can get arrested and then they dismiss the case and you think that that's not going to show up on your record, but it does. So just be wary of that.
Oh, wow. That's a good one. I think I have another question. Now, I know you guys have, well, I'm part of teamwork. I don't know. I think I got a caller. I'm so sorry, people. So sorry. We got a caller. All right. I didn't pay attention to the board. 4069. I think I know who that is. Go ahead. 4069. Go ahead, caller, with your question. Question only.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. How everybody doing?
Good.
I got a question about Chicago, like the lawyer system. Why I can't get no help when I can prove treason on Chicago police, just state attorney's office and public defender's office. I've been in Chicago complaining for the last too many years, no help. I'm pretty sure a lot of you heard of me. My name is Levante Ozine Burke. I can prove treason in Chicago from CPD from 12 years old to 25 years old, but I get no help. I complain to the governors, the senators, the congressmen. I mean, everybody, no help. It's like they steal my whole bracket. They won't give me no kind of, I go to the Daily Center to try to get police reports. They stole all the police reports. They stole criminal files out my court case. I mean, like, I can't get nothing. Why is Chicago doing this where they're getting away with destroying somebody that's hollering for treason and gets no help?
Now, I think that the council just said that you can go to 35th and get your arrest record. If I'm quite sure they got that down there, some of your arrest record. They should have that every time that you've been. Go ahead, bro.
I got all that. Juvenile, adult, everything. I want the police report. John Burge destroyed my life at 12 years old. A judge at 1100 South Hamilton, an illegal judge. I got the proof that another judge, he blocked it so that they had to use another judge to violate me to prove later that I was innocent. My original judge wouldn't do it because he knew Daley name was violating me, but I get no help because Mayor Daley name on there. He was state's attorney then. See, I know they know about the 702 law. I'm one of the first ones they did that. They did it illegally. You only can 702 somebody at 13 years old. I was 12 years old when it happened. So my judge did not want to do it because it was illegal. But they went until after my birthday to charge me as an adult. Illegal.
Ooh.
Can I get some help? Levante Burke.
I tell you, you have to call that number. You have to call it. You have to take this. You see the number going across the screen. First Defense Legal Aid, the 1-800-LAW, Rep 4. Take that number and call that number, brother Devontae. Yeah, and see what happens from there.
Okay, I'll be there. Thank you.
Okay, I appreciate it. Yes, sir. All right, thank you.
And Daniel, just listening to him, is it anything that comes to mind at all?
You know, the legacy of John Burge and the people who worked under him and some of the state's attorneys who were involved is one of the most shameful things that has ever happened in this city. And there are a lot of powerful people who, for a long time, tried to cover that up. And over a period of years, got brought to light more and more and more. And I can't speak to this specific situation without more detail about what exactly happened, about why, but I'm so sorry that this happened to you. And I can't promise that we'll be able to help, but I promise that we will try.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow. That came from a deep place because you toned out on that one. So I felt that passion. Wow, that came from a deep place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, one more question. Now, when is the next rap sheet they hear? You know, you can tell us that.
We don't know.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it might be in the new year sometime because right
Okay.
now we're working on our backlog, but that shouldn't stop you from coming in if you need assistance because we'll take care of your case no matter what.
All right.
Yeah.
We got 2 attorneys here now. Yeah, 2. So hey, Englewood is growing. Englewood First Response. Not talking about Englewood First Response. Englewood Teamwork Englewood.
Teamwork, right?
That's the organization I belong to. So, all right. So we can go ahead, Vera. Any more questions?
But you know what? Again,
We got another 10 minutes.
another
So.
10 minutes. So
Yeah.
you know what? Just to wrap up from everything that we've spoken about, if you guys could just kind of give us some closing remarks. I don't necessarily have any questions. I don't know if we got anybody
I
that
actually
want to
have
call
one
in.
question for you.
Go ahead.
How often are police officers required to keep their body cameras on? Or is there like some sort of law that they have to follow with that?
There is an Illinois state statute. It's a good question. There is an Illinois state law, the Law Enforcement Body Worn Camera Act. I don't know the citation, but it sets out when the body cams, how long body cam footage should be recorded, and when it can be flagged for destruction, when it can stick around longer. And the Chicago Police Department has a directive relating to the usage of body cam. When should it be turned on? I can say as a general rule, when the police are interacting with a member of the public in the sense of a traffic stop, a pat down, something like that, that body cam should be on.
Okay.
Correct.
And it should be stored according to the law. If there is a criminal charge associated with it, it should be stored longer. And, they don't get turned on every time, and they should, but that's the general rule. It's like when the police are interacting with somebody in public, they should have it on.
And do they face repercussions if they don't? Like, do you see that happening often and a suit against them?
So it's sort of interesting that, if you went the COPA route, the Civilian Office of Police Accountability, there's a chance an officer could be disciplined for failing to activate a body cam. I've seen that a number of times. In terms of the civil rights lawsuit, it's not going to be ultimate proof that they violated your rights, but it might be helpful in other ways, because if you can tell a judge, this bad thing, the police did this bad thing. Oh, and by the way, they didn't even put their videos on when they were supposed to. That's persuasive, that's helpful.
But now she opened up a can of worms. I've got some questions now. With the body cam. So why is it? I mean, what is the law that they have to come out? The Illinois statute of releasing the body cam in a case or something.
So typically, you got a right to your own body cam.
Okay.
And the law that you're going to use is called the Freedom of Information Act, or often called FOIA.
Mm-hmm.
And so you send a request to, let's say it's Chicago, to the Chicago Police Department, a FOIA request. It can be very simple. There's an online portal. You should give your name, the date of the interaction, the location, if there's an arrest, maybe one of the numbers that is associated, with that arrest. And they've got 5 business days to produce those records. After 5 days, they are allowed to have 5 more days. They can get a 5-day extension. So you get 10 business days. After that 10 business day period, they are technically in violation of the law. And, CPD gets so many FOIA requests, that there's a backlog of like months to get your body cam, even though you're supposed to get it in 10 days. And that's another thing that we do at First Defense Legal Aid, is help people, assert their rights with FOIA lawsuits. If there's a FOIA and you haven't gotten what you're supposed to get, we will sue to try to get that body cam footage. And we've never lost one of those cases.
Oh wow.
Oh wow.
That's interesting. Well, I remember when they first was required to wear body cams. I remember that a lot of us, even myself, protest for body cams during the Laquan McDonald cover up here in the city of Chicago. So that's great news to know. Anything else, partner?
Man, you know what? I don't. I'm kind of popped with questions. I am. But I guess here's the thing. If for somebody that's just tuning in, we would recommend going back and watching the full video. But Daniel, if you could just give us a summary, just a brief 5 minute or less summary on what we talked about today for somebody that's just tuning in.
So if you're filing, and thanks y'all so much for giving us this space to talk today. And thanks everybody for your questions. The law that you use to sue for a constitutional violation against the police, it was passed in 1871, and it was called the Ku Klux Klan Act. And the reason for that law was because a lot of places in the South, the whole local government was captured by racists, by the Ku Klux Klan, by people associated with them, things like that. And so it gives an individual person to almost act as a private attorney general to try to enforce the law. And so one of the things to think about in a civil rights lawsuit is there are purposes, and those purposes are trying to correct historic injustice, long-standing injustice. So if you file a suit, is it gonna change everything? No. But are you moving the needle in the right direction? I think so. I think yes. And you can call for the type of assistance. I say this a lot. The hardest part of my job is saying no, and unfortunately, I do say no a lot because we are a small organization. We don't have the ability to represent every person that comes through our doors, but we will do our best to help you achieve your goals and work together to do that.
Oh, okay. All right, we're going to close with you, Council.
Okay. Again, thank you all for having me on here. Again, if you are needing of assistance with your criminal background, please come see us at Teamwork Englewood. We can walk you through your options, help you look through your arrest record, see what's eligible and what's not, and help remove those barriers that you're facing in terms of housing, employment, all of that stuff that's necessary to live a sustainable life. So come visit us.
All right, that ends it. I'm gonna
You
say my
already
love.
know what it is.
Y'all
You already know what it is.
What is it?
Live, uncut, unedited.
Again, a shout out to Mark for allowing us making this happen. Shout out to my dear brother Daniel, attorney. I like to say that. First Defense Legal Aid for coming here today, and our new attorney on board.
Yes.
All right. She's cool, y'all. Y'all come and meet her now. Come and get that record expunged. So thank you so much, Teamwork Englewood, for setting this up. And we appreciate you, me and my partner, Vera Giles Norris. We've been partners for many years, and we work great together. So, partner, anything else you want to say? That's it?
Listen, play the music.
And
When we tell the
You
truth.
already know what it is. Live,
what else?
uncut,
And this is,
unedited. Tell the truth
and what?
and shame the devil.
Thank y'all so much. Appreciate you. This is Live on